So what's hilarious is I had actually done this entire video and I forgot to hit start recording. So welcome back to our analysis of Descent into Avernus, where we're covering the adventure from a higher, more macro level. We're not going to talk about block text, monster stats, what spells your villains should know. None of that stuff. We're talking about big picture things because I feel like that's what DMs probably want more of, and that I feel much more competent at explaining. So this has been a slower series than I normally would have done because November is National Novel Writing Month. So been doing that. If you have been, hope that's been going well for you. We're going to talk about the most underdeveloped, in my opinion, humanoid villain in the Baldur's Gate portion, who is actually a villain and not just a stat block who you fight, which, maybe we'll go into the Dead 3 and how we can get more details about them later. But for now, we're going to talk about one of the other villains. And before we get into that, that's going to be spoilers for Descent into Avernus. It's not a big spoiler. I don't think any of your party will be surprised that this person turns out to be a villain. But just in case, spoilers for Descent into Avernus going forward. If you're not the DM running it or haven't completed the adventure, there are spoilers, and I'm going to be treating this for DMs who want advice to run the adventure. So I'm going to assume you've read the whole adventure book. Good, you've had time to click away. Today we're going to focus on Thavius Kreeg, High Observer of Eltergard. He's made a pact with Zariel to deliver the souls of his city to the devils, and there they will serve as cannon fodder in the Blood War. And by doing that, he hopes to elevate himself in his afterlife. And honestly, the book underdevelops him incredibly, and that's kind of fine. He can be a very simplistic bad guy. And like I said before we got into the spoilers portion, none of your players are going to be surprised he's a bad guy. No one's going to be shocked that the religious leader of the disappeared town, who is still here, is a bad guy. It's cliche, they see it coming, and in the book they literally give him an imp for a shadow. No one's going to be shocked. Don't try and trick your players about this. Just let them see it. And I'm going to tell you why. The Venthamper Villa or Manor is a long slog, and your players are going to have interactions with at least 3 other villains that should be way more tense. You've got Thirstwell, right? That should be a pretty tense encounter, unless, again, you're going by the book and this is the first time the party's ever seen him, and they probably one-shot him when they kick open the door. All right, but if you're built out some more world and they've interacted with Thirstwell, they know who he is and they can have a conversation, that's a pretty meaty encounter. The Duke, who is the heart of the encounter, she should be a legendary encounter. I don't like that she's just kind of a boring encounter, and if you rewrite it, change it so that she's in the big center room, make her, not like in that little corner off room where they have her, make her feel important, have her doing something down there, and do something to make that encounter way more memorable than it is. And then the third big villain that the party's going to deal with is Gargrath in the Shield of the Hidden Lord. And that's going to be an encounter that they're going to deal with the ramifications of for the rest of the campaign. So Kreeg needs to be a super low stakes expository encounter. Don't try and make it tricky. Don't make him into a difficult combat if the party wants to fight him. Just have him there and dispose of it quickly, because you got way too many other important things going on in this villa to waste time with, oh no, should we try and, determine if the High Observer of Eltergard is really a bad guy. Cut that out. He is. It's obvious. No one's surprised. No one is shocked. And they become less shocked if you do what we're going to talk about going forward. as we've said, the opening of the adventure, not that great. So go ahead and if you start your adventure in Elturel, whether you're using my write-up, someone else's write-up, the Alexandrian remix, I think, might have some advice on how to do that. Whichever one you're doing, doesn't matter. They should see Kreeg much earlier, get a good feel for who he is, and understand that he's not a guy they should trust, and they'll get that if you roleplay him right. How do you roleplay him right? Make sure that the party senses his flaws. He's got two major ones, and they're going to be hard to roleplay correctly, but they should come through in the way that he's, the way he holds himself, the way he carries himself, the way he treats the city as not the way anyone else in the city does. Right? Everyone else in the city is talking about, how great Kreeg was, how great the companion is. Kreeg is a bureaucrat, and he's not excited about the city, especially right now where he knows in like a day or two, maybe the same day, mattering how you do your opening, everyone here is going to disappear and literally go to hell. And so he needs to get Rhea out, the party out, because he's trying to, we'll get into why he wants Rhea out later, but he also needs to get himself out. So he is a bureaucrat who's in a hurry. This should feel way different than everyone else in Elturel. But not so weird that the party wants to immediately start fighting, but weird enough that someone's going to mention, hey, that was weird. So what's his big flaw? We went over this before. He's a coward. He has literally the ability to tap into the divine in this world, chose not to, and literally ran through the Pantheon, literally A to Z, got to the end, and was like, Zariel, sounds good, let's make a deal. Why? Because he's a coward and did not want to fight the Vampire Lord, which to us sounds like not that cowardly, but in the D&D world, Vampire Lords are an uncommon threat, but one in which holy warriors deal with regularly. So he's a coward. But he's also, I don't want to say greedy, because when you hear greedy, you think material goods or hedonism, right? He wants security and safety at the expense of everything else around him. Every moral is willing to take second fiddle to adding a layer of protection to himself. He's not tempted by creature comforts, right? He sells out his city because he's like, man, I'm a really evil guy. And hey, Zariel, I want some assurances that when I go down there, I'm going to be protected because I, having been trained in religion, know how the devil hierarchy works. He wants a powerful protector, and he wants to be able to push around lesser devils to do what he wants them to do. And this is still a pretty, there's not a whole lot of depth here, but we now have enough character points that you as the DM can probably ad-lib your way around this character and have him feel real and not inconsistent when the party finally gets the reveal that he's a bad guy under Van Thamper Manor. So, they mouth off to him early. He's in Elturel, he feels comfortable there, and he knows he's got very powerful people in that city that he could just be like, hey, I need help right this second. So, don't let him get pushed around when he's there. He's a wretched, cowardly bully, but in Elturel, he feels safe, and he may even push back on the party and be like, hey, I'm hiring you. Are you sure you want to pick a fight on this? So the party won't, because in general, the party just doesn't. Parties generally don't pick fights at their first level with obvious people who are in significant positions of power. So you're pretty safe that they're not going to try and blow up your campaign by like, guys, Kreeg's obviously a bad guy. We should do something about this before we leave Elturel. They're going to file it away as when we get back here, that's something we should deal with. They don't realize that they're never getting back there in the way they think they are. So all right, party has left Elturel. Kreeg has also secretly left Elturel. Elturel goes poof. They head down to Baldur's Gate. What happens? How do we learn about Kreeg? Because he's gone and the party's never going to see him again. Lean on Rhea have Rhea in points in between the adventure when the party is role-playing with each other, when there's lulls, when you just need a couple of minutes to make sure you have your notes for the next section. Give Rhea stories about Kreeg that, I don't want to say humanize him, but makes it clear that the Kreeg she sees is different than what the party sees, right? They see this boring, officiating bureaucrat. She sees the guy who, like, never really celebrated birthdays growing up, in part because, he was dealing with a vampire lord as far as she's concerned and all of that, and is constantly dealing with, Baldur's Gate being right there and all of the other existential threats to the world. And so she, talks about making him a birthday cake. Maybe she shows off the holy symbol that he gave her at one point. Talks about how boring his religious lectures are. But at the end of each of these, make sure that there is a moral or a fable to it that lets the party understand Rhea more, but is also starkly in contrast to what they know about Kreeg. So, like, when she talks about, like, how she felt that he was very grateful for what she was doing, the party never sees anything like that, and your players may not pick up on it, but subconsciously they realize that, Rhea is reflecting what she wanted to see in people in what she sees in Kreeg. So you're using Kreeg these stories not to make Kreeg seem like a good guy, but so that the fact that Rhea is a generous person, she sees the best in people, that she reflects, she wants to, help people. They see this in her stories about what she does for Kreeg, who no one in the party cares about. The party is already convinced he's kind of a jerk going into these stories. So they're not seeing, oh, we were wrong about Kreeg. They're like, oh, Rhea is a little naive, a running theme with Rhea, but also is a good person that we want to, work on. So what happens when we get back to Kreeg at the bottom of Vanthampur Manor? We already talked about this needs to be a quick pro forma encounter with Kreeg, right? Here we can see all of his sniveling whiningness at its best. He knows he's busted because the party's going to come in. They're going to see that he's got a giant devil's shadow. He knows that the only thing he could possibly do that might help, prove his case is cast some divine magic, but he can't. If you notice, I think a weird thing about this room is there's like a broken dagger in there. And it was a really weird note, but I'm like, use one of Rhea's stories to show that long time ago, Kreeg told her a story about casting mending. Just throw it in there, have it be one of Rhea's many stories to put the seed in their head that, hey, if we can test, can Kreeg cast magic? Because he's going to say, oh, I don't have any slots left. They've, kept me up for days. They've starved me. I haven't been able to rest. I'm going to be like, fine, use a cantrip. We know mending. Fix this dagger. Your players may not come up with that solution to test it, but I feel like I might be giving the writers too much credit, or maybe the broken dagger isn't a real thing in the block text, and I'm just adding it in because I added it in, but it's a little way there that, if the party thinks about it, they feel really smart. They are like, oh my god, we were given these random things, this puzzle, we solved the puzzle. And now we know that Kreeg is a bad guy, even though, like, they're all looking at, like, the one person at the table who's like, as maybe, just maybe, like, make me feel 100% about this. They're pushing that last person at the table into accepting what everyone else believes, right? So there you go. They're dealing with him under the Vanthampur Manor. He's whiny, and however the party gets rid of him, you need him dead before they get to Avernus. Easiest way to do it is if they hand him over to whoever they're working with in Baldur's Gate. I don't think they're going to keep this guy alive. He's a political problem, especially with Ravengard missing. So the party leaves. Most likely the Flaming Fist will just lie to them and be like, of course we're not going to just execute this guy if you ask us not to. The party will probably kill him when they see that he's a devil. Maybe not, but either way, by the time they get to Avernus, He needs to be dead so that you can use him in Avernus in a way better way than the module does. In the module, all they do is turn him into a roughly CR equivalent encounter, throw him on Zariel's airship or whatever, and they're like, whatever, he's there, the party fights him, they kill him again. It's fine, I guess, because they don't think Kreeg's important, but we've still got Rhea hanging around with the party. The party spent a lot more time in Elturel. They have probably heard the story about how Kreeg summoned the companion. Kreeg should feel important to them. But he also hasn't really earned mini-boss status by this point. There's too many other big players going on. You've got the Warlords, you've got all of the Archdevils running around, you've got Zariel, you've got some Demon Lords. We don't have room for another mid-tier villain here. So, let's see what we can do to fix that. Here's my fix. Zariel sees Kreeg's soul, does her part of the deal, grabs him before he, goes to become a lemur, and he's like, okay, I held up my end of the bargain, I'm here, elevate me. Zariel has to keep her deal, because as we talked about with the Pact Primeval, she's gotta. But she hates Kreeg. And this isn't me just saying the book says so. What we know about Zariel, all of Kreeg's flaws are exactly the sort of flaws that Zariel is going to hate. He's a coward, both physically and morally, right? He doesn't go out to fight for his people. He is willing to sell out his people, but also morally, Zariel's like, look at what I was willing to do to stick to my guns and, fight demons. And look at you who have no moral center. Because remember, Zariel knows that she's now an evil creature, but she thinks, whatever, I still have this moral center, fight demons. She doesn't see that in Kreeg. Not only that, Kreeg betrayed his people. What is Zariel's biggest sore point with Elturel? That the Hellriders betrayed her. And so here's this guy whose big claim to fame right now with Zariel is, oh yeah, I'm the traitor of Elturel. She's not a fan, and she's looking for any loophole as to why she should not have to elevate this guy. So let's look at the deal, right? He says he's going to deliver to her all of the souls from Elturel. Well, and then she will elevate him. So she looks at him, she looks at Elturel up in the sky, and his deal's not complete, is it? It's not complete until all those souls are Zariel's. As far as I'm concerned, if I'm Zariel, you didn't make your deal. And so she's going to not elevate him. We don't want to turn him into a lemur, though, as a DM, because now he's a really cool NPC for us to use in Avernus, because we need to solve some problems when we get to Avernus. First, our problem is we need the party to be able to interact indirectly with Zariel. Zariel is not the sort of villain like you might have with, say, a Strahd, who can interact with the party and then leave. As soon as Zariel interacts with the party and she realizes, oh, you are an obstacle, nothing in her character says that she's like, and I will deal with you in 4 to 5 levels when I am an appropriate encounter. She will smash them. We don't want to even set up a scenario where we have to do something lame like, oh, she left you all unconscious and handed you over to Mahadi as a lesson. We want to avoid any of that. So, what if we had someone who the party already knew, we don't have to introduce a new player to this, who wasn't a threat to causing our plot to explode, and who could help the party understand exactly how terrible Avernus is. Enter Thavius Kreeg, the Imp. He is now the voice of Zariel, and everyone knows that they better not destroy him because Zariel, he is basically on layaway, right? Once Zariel owns all of the souls in Elturel, she'll have to uphold her end of the bargain and elevate him into a real devil one day. But he hasn't done that yet, so as a compromise, he is on Imp layaway as far as she's concerned, right? Okay, I'm not going to destroy you. I'm not going to turn you into a lemur until it happens because you're useful. But I don't have to turn you into a pit fiend or anything right now. I can turn you into something where everyone will bully and torment you, and you will basically be miserable as all of his worst fears become true. And this is again to remind us that Zariel is evil at this point. What she does here is heinously evil. She hates Kreeg, dislikes him, and now is going to use a very narrow argument in their deal to be like, and now I'm going to literally, figuratively, throw you to the devil wolves, and you're going to suffer until, well, however long it takes. But don't worry, I'll keep our deal in the end. And this pitiful imp Kreeg is who we use to be the voice of Zariel to the party throughout Avernus, so that we can avoid a messy narrative blunder that we would run into if Zariel either was surprisingly merciful to the party, if she, when everyone was, unconscious except for one person, was like, oh, it's tea time, gotta go. We'll avoid that by not putting her in a position where when the party interacts, she realizes that they are bugs to be squashed until we reach a point where we want that encounter. So there we go. That's how I think you can help fix Kreeg. You'll notice this also gives you a little bit of insight into Zariel, Rhea, how to bring out more interesting things about them, help you with Avernus as a whole to create a theme that I think the book does a poor job of doing, but just the party getting this very visceral, they know that Kreeg is a slimy, cowardly nobody, and then seeing what that translates to here in Avernus, seeing him go from, this big lofty guy who's a bully, pushes people around, and then watching him be tormented for it, that is going to go so much further for helping the party realize that this is an unpleasant place, and even the people that the party is like, yeah, no, that guy is evil and deserves what he's going to get, they're going to then see it, and they're going to hopefully, because remember, you're hoping that your players in D&D are heroic fantasy, they're going to be like, oh, wait. No one deserves what this guy is going to get. Now, what you want them to be able to do about it, besides coming to that realization, your adventure, figure it out. But take all of this, and I guess now I'm going to repeat myself. It's your adventure, take this, figure it out, turn it into something better than the module, and that is personal to your players. So thank you, and this time I did hit record, so it's actually going to go up, and next time I'm going to know what to do with my hands, because as you notice, they go everywhere. All right, bye. Please bye once I hit the button. Stop recording.